Hello, Madam Prina, and welcome to my first podcast. Today we will be discussing everything wrong with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3. Now, first of all, let's start. Don't get me wrong, I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3 specifically, because Okay, let's start with some background information. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3 is actually based on Around the World in 80 Days. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, actually released first time in 1989, the very first volume. It has been going ever since, as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure currently is on Part 8, but I will be reviewing the anime, which came out not too long ago, the latest adaptation. I don't know exactly, sorry. But there are loads of things wrong with the anime. It's a great anime, but I just can't understand. So, they start off in Japan. You're introduced to Jotaro, who is a stand user. Now, stand, for those of you who don't know, stands are physical manifestations of people's mental power, you could say. They're kind of like weird ghost thingies, and they can do things. They give them an advantage over normal humans. Now, Jotaro doesn't know anything about stands, but he has a stand, and he calls his evil spirit. Not because that's actually its name, he just thinks it's some kind of evil spirit. Now, the problem with this is it just starts off, and already the main character is clueless. He locks himself up in a jail because he thinks he's cursed. It's not a normal thing to do, and personally, I would have liked Jotaro a lot more if once he found out his power, he would have embraced it instead of doing what he did and locking himself up in jail. Even once Joseph Joestar came to him, his grandfather, and explained the whole deal, he didn't believe him until Avdol showed him his stand, Magician's Red. After this, everything's all good. Everyone has these magical powers, and at this point, you can't really tell where the rest of Part 3 is headed. Until, suddenly, Joseph's mother, Holly, becomes sick. And she doesn't just become sick normally. Her sickness is to do with a stand which is manifesting in her and is far more powerful than she is. The reason for this stand is that the enemy from Part 1, Dio, survived all along. He actually survived using Jonathan Joestar's body, which is Holly's great-grandfather. This blood tie between Dio and Holly means that when Dio manifests the stand, Holly's on the receiving end. So she can equally feel any pain and has the power, is affected by the power of Dio's stand. This leaves Holly gravely ill and leads to Jotaro and Joseph having to go on a little adventure to save her. They start off in Tokyo and they take a plane to Hong Kong. But the plane crashes and they have to fight the Tower of Grey straight away. They really don't have a choice. It's like this weird insect thing which attempts to kill them and ends up crashing the plane. In Hong Kong, already, you can tell how this is going to go. It's going to be, well, exactly what it was. In the sort of way that they went around the world, they went from Hong Kong to Singapore to Calcutta to Benares to Karachi, all the way to Cairo in Egypt. Obviously, they didn't do this conventionally by plane as they had intended, because they had to fight many other stand users along the way. Now, these stand users were deployed by Dio. And the thing is, it's all cool how all the stand users are unique, and they all have these very nice individual powers. But every 5 steps they walk, they encounter another stand user, which it grows as they progress along their journey, each stand user becomes increasingly strong. So, as inventive and as nice and creative as the show is, most of the journey, which is the first half of part 3, is just they take 2 steps, fight another guy, level up, go to the next guy, etc., etc. Which I know, it's cool. Some of the action is really good. You can see Jotaro and all the other guys. They gain some friends along the way. And you get to see them go through all these difficult situations and somehow survive. But then at this point, you know, they're just going to fight and survive every single person until they get to Cairo. Which is like 50 episodes of guy takes a step, bad guy appears, almost dies, beats bad guy, heals himself, continues to walk. And, I mean, it's cool because they get into a cargo ship, the ship sinks, they have a submarine, another aeroplane, camels, deserts. But really, it's just the same thing over and over again. And it's this repetitiveness that really, really drains part 3. Now, the other thing about part 3 that really annoys me is the fact that I don't feel that Jotaro has enough action. All the other people, such as Polnareff, Avdol, they all get quite a fair amount of action. As you would expect. In fact, a lot more than you'd expect from a side character. But then it's almost as if Jotaro, the main character, who becomes evidently main towards the end, gets a fair amount of action. But on the way there, he doesn't. He doesn't fight enough. And you don't get to see his stand start platinum, pummel enemies. And that's why I watch the show. I'm sure loads of other people agree that Jotaro is the best JoJo anyway. Anyway, moving on. They make it to Cairo, and in a nutshell, they find Dio. Dio kills everyone except for Jotaro. Jotaro finds out he can stop time, as can Dio. Outsmarts Dio, kills Dio, and then somehow manages to bring back Joseph back to life. In this, Kakyoin and Avdol both die, so the only survivors from this journey are Polnareff, Joseph, and Jotaro. And all 3 of these guys, they survive, well, a lot of things, except, you see, the other thing is, everyone dies too much. Like, Avdol, he dies once when they were fighting the Emperor, which is a gun stand, but then somehow comes back to life when they find Wheel of Fortune, I think. Yeah. And the problem with this is that Wheel of Fortune, I mean, you see, that part, what happens is, Avdol all along was alive, everyone knew except for Polnareff, who was crying his eyes out. Somewhere along the way, they acquire a dog called Iggy, which is also a stand user. And then Iggy is just like, everyone hates the Bloody Mutt. But then, out of nowhere, somehow, Iggy becomes useful, and then everyone cries when Iggy dies, and then Iggy saves Polnareff's life, as does Avdol. They both save his life, they give up theirs for him to live. And I may be, like, talking out of opinion here, but did they both really have to die then? And then, the fact that Polnareff was so stubborn, he just was like, oh, you don't have to die, Iggy. But Iggy was dying anyway. It was either they both died, or just Iggy died. So anyway, they get there. As you expect, Jojo always wins. Joseph dies. Jotaro stops time when Dio's time limit runs out, and then kills Dio. After all this is over, he comes back, and literally the same thing happens in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, where you see Jotaro with his own cool ability to stop time just doesn't use it enough. And I understand that Josuke now is a main JoJo, but surely Jotaro could be a bit more involved. I mean, he may be my favorite JoJo, and that may be affecting my judgment here, but he doesn't use his power enough, and he's arguably the most powerful stand and the most powerful JoJo ever. Thank you for listening. This is podcast about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Bye.